I never thought I'd be the type of person to cut contact with my own parents. I mean, no matter how much you disagree with them, they're still your family, right? That's what I used to believe. But sometimes, family can be the people who hurt you the most. And in my case, my parents didn't just hurt me, they took my generosity, my kindness, and my success and twisted it into something ugly. My name is Daniel, and I'm 28 years old. I grew up in a family where respect was conditional. My parents, especially my dad, always made it clear that love had to be earned. As a kid, that meant getting straight A's, excelling in sports, and doing whatever chores they demanded without question. If I slipped up, even slightly, they reminded me that I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Unlike most parents who might be proud of a hardworking child, mine saw me as an investment. They bragged to their friends about my achievements, but never to my face. Praise was reserved for how I could make them look better. If I won a school competition, they took credit. If I got a scholarship, they told everyone it was because they pushed me so hard. It wasn't that I wanted to be babied with affection, but hearing, "we're proud of you," just once would have meant everything. My younger sister, Rachel, had a completely different experience. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. While I had to earn every bit of approval, she was showered with it just for existing. My parents spoiled her, covered for her mistakes, and bent over backward to make sure she was comfortable. If she wanted something, they found a way to get it, even if it meant using me. By the time I was in high school, I had already accepted that I was the family's workhorse. They didn't ask me if I wanted to take on extra responsibilities. They expected it. I got my first job at 16, hoping to save up for a car. But when my mom found out I was making money, she suddenly had emergencies that required me to hand over my paycheck. "You live here for free," she'd say. "It's only fair that you contribute." Of course, Rachel never had to contribute a dime. I worked hard, not just because I had to, but because I wanted to escape. I graduated at the top of my class, got into a great college on a full scholarship, and did everything I could to build a life for myself. Even then, my parents found ways to guilt trip me. When I moved out, they acted like I was abandoning them. If I didn't visit enough, they'd remind me of everything they sacrificed for me. But the truth was, they had never sacrificed anything for me. If anything, I was the one making sacrifices for them. After years of grinding, I finally reached a point where I was financially secure. I landed a high-paying job, invested wisely, and, for the first time, had real stability. And despite everything, a part of me still wanted my parents to be proud. I thought that maybe if I showed them that I had made it, they'd finally treat me differently. So, like a fool, I decided to give back. I started small, sending money here and there when they needed it. But no matter how much I helped, it was never enough. My mom would call me, sighing dramatically about how tight things were, even though they lived comfortably. My dad would drop hints about how real men take care of their families financially. And Rachel, well, she had no shame outright asking me to cover her bills. Then, the big one came. My parents had been complaining about their mortgage for years. They had refinanced so many times that their monthly payments were ridiculous. I knew they would never get out from under it, so I made a decision. I paid off their house. Every last penny. I thought this would finally be the moment. The one where they looked at me and said, "Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate you." But that moment never came. Instead, my dad barely reacted, as if he had expected it all along. My mom just muttered something about how it was about time someone in the family did something useful. Still, I wasn't ready to give up hope. Maybe they just didn't know how to express gratitude. Maybe it would take time for it to sink in. So, I kept going. I sent them on their dream vacation, an all-expenses-paid trip to Europe. My mom had always talked about wanting to see Paris, and my dad loved history, so I thought this would be the perfect gift. For once, I wanted to see them happy because of something I did. When they got back, I expected to hear all about it. Instead, the first thing my mom said when she saw me was, "Next time, you should book us first class." That was when I started to realize the truth. My generosity wasn't bringing us closer. It was making them worse. They weren't just ungrateful, they saw me as their personal bank. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I was already starting to feel drained. But I told myself I'd get through it. After all, it was just one night. I could handle a few snide remarks, a couple of passive-aggressive comments. It was a small price to pay for keeping the peace. But I had no idea how bad it was going to get. When I walked into my parents' house that evening, everything felt normal at first. The smell of turkey filled the air. I greeted everyone, sat down, and braced myself for the usual family chaos. Then, as we started eating, the conversation shifted. My dad, with that familiar smirk on his face, leaned back in his chair and said, "So, Daniel, how does it feel throwing money around, thinking that'll earn you respect?" I froze. The room went silent for a split second before my mom chuckled under her breath. Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. I forced a laugh, trying to play it off. "What do you mean?" My dad took another sip of his drink. "I mean, you act like paying off a house and buying vacations makes you important. But at the end of the day, respect isn't bought. And honestly, you haven't earned any." That was the moment everything inside me snapped. I had spent years bending over backward for these people, giving them everything they asked for and more. And this was their response? Not just ingratitude, but outright mockery? I clenched my jaw, feeling my heart pound in my chest. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves, it was the way he said them. So casual, so dismissive, like he was scolding a child for trying too hard. I set my fork down slowly. "Huh," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That's funny." My dad raised an eyebrow. "What's funny?" I met his gaze and gave him the smallest smile. "You'll see." And with that, I made a decision that would change everything. But I didn't say another word. Not yet. I just kept eating, pretending nothing had happened, all while planning exactly what I was going to do next. Little did they know, their entire world was about to shift. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one cleaning up the mess. I sat through the rest of Thanksgiving dinner in complete silence. My dad kept talking, my mom chimed in with the occasional smug remark, and Rachel stayed glued to her phone as if nothing had happened. But in my head, I was already miles ahead of them. I had spent my entire life playing their game, working hard, giving endlessly, hoping that one day they'd see me as more than just their personal ATM. But tonight, I finally saw things for what they were. They weren't going to change. They never would. So, I was done. I finished my plate, pushed my chair back, and stood up. "Well," I said, forcing a smile, "this was fun. I should get going." Rachel barely looked up. My mom didn't even react. But my dad? He just smirked like he'd won. Like he thought I was running away, licking my wounds. I didn't say anything else. No dramatic speech. No argument. I just grabbed my coat, walked out the door, and left them to their smug little world. And that's when I put my plan into motion. The first thing I did when I got home was log into my bank account. I pulled up every recurring payment I had set up for them, their utilities, their internet, even that ridiculous streaming service my mom insisted she couldn't live without. I canceled everything. Then, I went deeper. Their property taxes? No longer covered. The insurance on the house? Gone. The maintenance fund I had set up for any repairs? Empty. For years, I had handled every financial detail for them, making sure they never had to lift a finger. Now, they were about to find out exactly what life was like without me. But I wasn't done. I opened up my messages and scrolled to Rachel. I had never told her outright, but I had been paying off her credit card debt for years. Every month, I quietly covered her overdrafts, making sure she never felt the consequences of her spending habits. I pulled up her bank's website and removed my name from the payments. And finally, the last step. I had co-signed my parents' car loan 2 years ago, thinking I was doing something nice for them. It was in my name, but the payments were coming from their account, an account I had been filling without them even knowing. I called the bank and had the car repossessed. It took less than an hour to undo everything. And then, I waited. The first missed call came at 6:45 a.m. The next one at 6:47. By the time I checked my phone, there were 127 missed calls. I didn't even have to listen to the voicemails to know what they were about. I could picture it perfectly. My dad waking up, grabbing his coffee, and heading out the door, only to find his car gone. My mom trying to turn on the TV, only to realize their internet was cut off. Rachel swiping her card at some overpriced boutique, only to have it declined for the first time in her life. I could see the panic setting in, and I smiled. Then my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. Finally, I answered. I didn't say anything, just waited. My mom's voice came screeching through the speaker. "What did you do?" I leaned back against my pillows, completely calm. "Good morning, Mom. Don't you good morning me. The car is gone. Our bills aren't getting paid. The power company just sent a warning that if we don't pay by the end of the day, they'll shut everything off. What is going on?" I pretended to think. "Huh, that's weird." "Weird?" "Weird," she shrieked. "You need to fix this now." I sighed dramatically. "See, here's the thing, Mom. I thought about what Dad said last night. about how throwing money around doesn't earn respect. And you know what? He's right. So I decided to stop throwing money around. Silence. Then, my dad's voice came in furious. Don't play games with us, Daniel. Fix this. I laughed. I actually laughed. No, what do you mean? No. I shrugged. I mean, no. I'm done. If you think I'm such a fool for helping, then I won't help. You wanted to teach me a lesson, right? Consider it learned. You ungrateful little, I hung up. And then, I turned my phone off. I didn't check my messages for the rest of the day. I didn't need to. I already knew what they'd say, more screaming, more guilt-tripping, maybe even a few fake apologies. But I wasn't falling for it this time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to make things right. I was the one watching them fall apart. And honestly, it felt amazing. I didn't turn my phone back on until the next morning. The second I did, the notifications flooded in missed calls, voicemails, texts. My mom had sent paragraph after paragraph, alternating between raging insults and desperate pleas. My dad's messages were short and furious, full of demands. Rachel, of course, had only sent one message. What is wrong with you, Daniel? I scrolled through them, taking my time. The desperation was setting in faster than I expected. Then, as if on cue, my phone started ringing again. Mom. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I sighed and answered. Daniel, she started, her voice strained, trying to sound calm but already cracking. You need to fix this. Now. Good morning, Mom, I said, leaning back in my chair. How's everything going? Don't play dumb. Her voice sharpened. The internet is off. The power company says they're shutting us down in 24 hours. Your father had to take the bus to work. Daniel. The bus. Do you understand how humiliating that was for him? I almost laughed. Oh no. How awful. You mean, like regular people? This isn't funny. She snapped. You can't just stop paying for everything and leave us in this mess. What are we supposed to do? I leaned forward. I don't know, Mom. Maybe get jobs? Maybe, I don't know, take responsibility for your own lives. You. She cut herself off, exhaling sharply. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. Daniel, we are your family. You don't just turn your back on family. Interesting, I said. Because last night, I could have sworn I was just some fool who thinks he's important because he throws money around. Right? Isn't that what Dad said? She hesitated. Then, in a tone so fake it made my skin crawl, she said, Sweetheart, you know your father didn't mean that. Oh, he didn't? I asked, tilting my head. Then why didn't he apologize? Silence. I waited. Nothing. I smiled. That's what I thought. Have a great day, Mom. I hung up. The calls didn't stop. Neither did the texts. Over the next few days, the messages became more erratic. My mom sending long-winded guilt trips about how I was abandoning them. My dad cycling between threats and silence. And Rachel alternating between pretending she didn't care and demanding I fix her credit card. But I held firm. Then, exactly 1 week later, they showed up at my door. I had barely opened it when my dad pushed inside, my mom right behind him. Rachel lagged behind, arms crossed, looking irritated more than anything. What is wrong with you? My dad barked, towering over me. You think you can just cut us off like this? I stepped back, folding my arms. Yeah, I do. You selfish little, Mom grabbed his arm, stopping him. Daniel, she said, her voice soft and sickly sweet. We just need to talk. As a family. Oh, now we're a family? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Because last week, I was just a fool throwing money around. She exhaled sharply. I told you, your father didn't mean that. Then he should have said that himself. Dad's hands clenched into fists, and for a second, I thought he was actually going to throw a punch. Instead, he took a deep breath, nostrils flaring. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. Maybe I was too harsh. But that doesn't mean you get to do this. You don't just let your parents struggle. I scoffed. Struggle? You mean like I did when you kicked me out at 18 and told me to figure it out? Or like I did when I worked 2 jobs while you refused to lift a finger to help me? Or how about when I finally got successful and the only thing you ever did was demand more? Rachel groaned loudly. Oh my God, we get it. You struggled. Boo-hoo. Can we just skip to the part where you fix everything? I turned to her, stunned. Fix everything? She rolled her eyes. Yes, Daniel. Just turn everything back on. Jesus, it's not that hard. I stared at her. Then at my parents. None of them looked remorseful. None of them even seemed to realize what they had done. They weren't here to apologize. They weren't here to make things right. They were here because they needed me. Because for the first time in their lives, they actually had to face consequences. And they couldn't stand it. I took a slow, deep breath and looked each of them in the eye. No, I said simply. My dad's jaw tightened. My mom's face fell. Rachel just scoffed. Dad took a step forward. Daniel, I am not going to ask you again, and I am not going to say it again, I interrupted. No, I'm done. If you want money, go earn it. If you want the house paid for, do it yourself. I'm done being your personal bank. My mom's face twisted. We raised you. You owe us. I laughed coldly. You raised me? You kicked me out at 18. You refused to help me when I was struggling. You let me break my back for years while you sat around doing nothing. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I don't owe you a single thing. For the first time, none of them had anything to say. I looked at them one last time, then walked to the door and opened it wide. Get out. Dad's fists clenched. His nostrils flared. But for once, he said nothing. He just stormed past me, shoving the door as he left. Rachel groaned, flipping her hair back. You're such a drama queen, she muttered before following. Mom was the last to leave. She hesitated, her mouth opening like she wanted to say something. But when I didn't respond, she just exhaled and walked out. I shut the door behind them, locked it, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. For a while, I thought they had finally given up. No more calls. No more texts. No more guilt tripping. The silence was strange at first, but after years of being emotionally blackmailed and financially drained, I started to enjoy it. My phone wasn't blowing up with demands. I wasn't being treated like a human ATM. I was finally free. Or so I thought. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a call from my aunt, my mom's older sister, Linda. Now, Linda and I were never particularly close. She had always been the family mediator, the one who tried to smooth things over whenever my parents caused chaos. She wasn't as outright toxic as them, but she had a bad habit of brushing off their behavior, constantly excusing them with, "That's just how they are." So when she called, I knew something was up. The second I picked up, she sighed dramatically. Daniel, you need to fix this. I already knew where this was going. Fix what? I said, keeping my voice flat. Your mother is beside herself. Your father has been completely stressed out. They don't know how they're going to survive. Do you really think it's okay to treat your parents like this? I felt my patience snap. Aunt Linda, they used me. For years. And when I finally put up a boundary, they humiliated me in front of the whole family. Now they expect me to keep funding their lives like nothing happened. They're your parents, she said, as if that was supposed to mean something. Family is family. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny. They didn't seem to care about family when they threw me out at 18. Where was this energy when I was struggling to survive on my own? Silence. She wasn't expecting that. Finally, she sighed again. Daniel, look, I get it. Your parents aren't perfect, but you're doing well now. You have the ability to help them. They're struggling, and you're just watching. Yes, I said, completely unbothered. Yes, I am. Her voice turned sharp. You're being cruel. No, I'm finally treating them the way they treated me. Another pause. Then her tone shifted into something more condescending. Fine. You don't have to give them money, but at least talk to them. Be the bigger person. That made me laugh. Why is it always me who has to be the bigger person? Why does everyone expect me to forgive and forget while they keep taking and taking? She huffed. You're being unreasonable. You're going to regret this one day. No, I won't. I hung up. That was the first sign they weren't done with me yet. The second sign came 2 days later. I woke up to 47 missed calls and a flood of texts from my parents, Rachel, and a few other relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The messages ranged from fake concern to outright rage. Mom texted, Daniel, please, we need to talk. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. Dad texted, you've made your point. Now be a man and take responsibility for your family. Rachel texted, wow, so you're really going to let Mom and Dad suffer just to prove a point? You're disgusting. Random cousin I haven't spoken to since childhood texted, dude, I don't know what's going on, but you need to make this right. Family is everything. And then there was the one that made me angry. Mom texted, we did everything for you. We gave you life. We raised you. And this is how you repay us? Abandoning us in our time of need? We're about to lose everything, and it's your fault. I hope you can live with that. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking with rage. My fault? My fault? They had no savings, no backup plan, no sense of responsibility, and somehow it was my job to fix it? After everything? After the years of guilt tripping, the entitlement, the humiliation? No, I wasn't falling for it. I didn't respond. The calls kept coming. The messages got nastier. Then, after a week of silence, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was my parents. I didn't answer. They rang again, and again, and again. Then came the pounding. "Daniel, open the door." My dad's voice furious. I sat on my couch, staring at the door, heart racing. My mom's voice followed, all fake sweetness. "Honey, please. We just want to talk." I stayed silent. More pounding. "You can't ignore us forever." "Yes, I can," I muttered under my breath. They stayed outside for nearly an hour before finally leaving. That night, my mom sent a final text. "You will regret this. One day, you'll need us, and we won't be there. I hope you're happy." I blocked their numbers. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've heard bits and pieces from other family members. My parents had to sell their house. My dad was forced to go back to work. My mom tried to start some online business, but it failed. Rachel? She's still bitter. Still complaining to anyone who will listen about what a selfish, ungrateful brother I am. None of it is my problem anymore. And you know what? I don't feel guilty. Not one bit. Because for the first time in my life, I'm free. So, Reddit, what do you think? Was I too harsh? Or was this the only way to finally be free?